Hello and welcome back to the Toffee Blues. My name is, of course, Cameron. I'm joined today by James. We're going to sit here and talk about a possible push for Europe for Carlo Ancelotti's Everton. Obviously, Carlo Ancelotti's Everton picking up 4 points since the return of the Premier League. A point against Liverpool in the Merseyside derby and 3 points last week against Norwich. We play Leicester City tomorrow, and we're going to talk about the possibility of Everton, pushing for a finish in those Europa League spaces at the end of this season. How good that will be considering where we were a couple of months ago, and whether or not we want to finish in the Europa League. I think there's pros and cons to certainly finishing 7th. I've got no real issue with finishing 6th or 5th because you go straight into the group stage. I think when you talk about 7th and there's those qualification games, and usually in normal circumstances you'd have to start playing the qualifiers in like the middle of July when the players have only been back for a couple of weeks and haven't had that lengthy of a pre-season. I don't even know how it's going to work now with what's going on in the world, but we'll talk about that, of course, in today's video. We'll talk briefly about tomorrow's game as well, because it's important that I think we get the 3 points if we are going to push for Europe, considering some of the fixtures that we've got to go before the end of the season. We've got to play Spurs, Wolves, Sheffield United, Southampton, all teams that are pushing. Certainly Wolves, Sheffield United and Spurs all pushing for those European positions. So, we're going to be needing to pick up as many points as possible. But how are you doing, James? Been a few weeks since we've spoke. Still in this weird lockdown, coming out of it, maybe going back in it. Premier League maybe getting suspended now that Liverpool have won the league again. How are you?
It's just hard to keep track of, isn't it? It's just everything seems to change day by day, and yeah, I've been pretty good, to be honest, mate. I'm glad to have the football back. I mean, we haven't had the worst of restarts, like you say, 4 points out of 6. You can't argue with that, and I think you made the most important point. That'll give everyone a bit of a morale boost. Is you said the words Carlo Ancelotti's Everton, and I think that's enough to just lift my mood a little bit, let's say.
That's it, mate. That's it. Come back into the Premier League. Certainly the two games that we've seen so far, obviously the Merseyside derby, I think, we got a point. And typically when we come out of Merseyside derbies like that and, there's opportunities for us to win the game and we only manage to draw, in usual circumstances, you might be slightly annoyed, you might be slightly upset. And I did see a couple of fans on social media saying, we had opportunities there and ultimately it goes down as another derby that we haven't won. But considering the circumstance, not playing a game competitively in 2 or 3 months, Liverpool had friendlies prior to that game. They'd played Championship, League One teams. We'd had no preparation. It really was like starting a Premier League season with the Merseyside derby being your first game of the season and just having no pre-season. And in that circumstance, I'd take the point. The game against Norwich again wasn't the most perfect performance, but we got the 3 points, and that's all that matters. In terms of tomorrow's game, then, if we're going to want a real push for Europe, if we're going to want to establish ourselves as one of those sides that are pushing for the Champions League, because again I say this and I reiterate it every time we talk about this topic, us as fans, me, James, Terry, we can all sit here and talk about how Everton should be pushing for the Europa League, Everton should be looking to get in the Champions League positions, but this message is also coming from the club. Denise Barrett-Baxendale, the CEO of Everton Football Club, in the AGMs is saying we want to be playing in the Champions League, we want to be pushing for the Europa League, we want to be challenging for titles. So if we're going to be doing that, and if there's a possibility of us finishing within those Europa League positions, surely tomorrow's a must-win in a game that we really have to stamp our authority against the side that have had a good season, not so much recently, since the restart of the Premier League, being in a little bit of a rocky stage of form, but so have Sheffield United. But overall this season have had a very, very good season. Realistically we need to go out and win tomorrow, don't we?
Definitely, we need to get the 3 points, and it's like you say, I think we haven't got an easy run of fixtures by any means. I think we all spoke about the established top 6, but we seem to be coming up against the kind of sides we want to try and usurp, who are above us in the table. You've got Wolves and Spurs both in the games after this, Southampton as well, who are not far behind us. It's a pretty, I think every game, the next 4 games are all must win if you want to consider us as serious contenders for top 6, top 7.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And you look at our remaining fixtures, and like you said, there's that established top 6, and you could look at our fixtures. What have we got? 7 remaining, and you could say, right, we've got Liverpool.
We've only got Spurs from the established top 6.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. That's what I mean. And you might look at these and you might think, well, at least it's not Liverpool, City, United, Chelsea, Arsenal, Spurs. But you look at the sides we've got to play. We've got to play a Leicester team who've had a fantastic season. Spurs, Wolves, and Sheffield United, who are pushing for the Europa League and Champions League places in and around our position. Southampton, who you said are only just behind us, and then Villa and Bournemouth, who are both fighting for the survival. So we haven't really realistically got a fixture there where we're playing a side that are probably comfortable where they are and aren't really going to be wanting to do much. We're playing either sides that are pushing for the same places that we want to be pushing for, or sides that are trying to fight their way out of the relegation zone. So it is quite a difficult run up between now and the end of the season, obviously starting with tomorrow's game. So in talking about the Europa League, then obviously, we've played in the competition many a time before. I think it's a fantastic competition, certainly when you can go abroad as a fan. I love it as well. I know it gets a lot of hate from the fans of the top six sides who have got this big, we should be better than that sort of attitude.
Right to the Champions League, they think.
Exactly. Even sides like Arsenal, who haven't been decent for however many years, still think that they should be in the Champions League every year. I like the Europa League. Listen, getting to go away, watching Everton Football Club all around the world, it's one of the best things you can do. It'll be a little bit different next season because I dare say we won't be able to travel as fans to watch the football club. But ultimately, there's still a lot of pros to playing in the Europa League. Not only are you playing in a European competition, not only is it another competition that gives us the opportunity to win, but players as well. It attracts a lot of players. There'll be a lot of players Everton are looking at this summer that, for example, Gabriel will be looking at us thinking, well, I'll come to you, but if you've not got European competition, then I'm probably going to go to a Napoli or somebody else who can guarantee me European qualification. So in regards to our push for the top 7, top 8, firstly I want to ask, do you believe we can make that? Do you believe we can finish in those positions, or do you think it's one step too far this season and we'll probably just finish out of it and then give it a real push next season? Secondly, would you want to finish let's say okay, if we could guarantee we would finish 5th or 6th, we'd all take it, but let's say 7th and there was still some form of qualification, where we had to play during our pre-season and midway through, and with given the current squad now, do you think we can push forward and break into those positions, and would you want to if we had to go through that qualification process?
I think for the first question about can we do it, I mean, as an it's an Everton fan talking to an Everton fan here. I'm not always necessarily very optimistic, and these kind of must-win games aren't the kind of games we've won. You can only hope that maybe it might be a bit different with Carlo Ancelotti managing the team in these kind of games, and maybe we might not buckle under the pressure quite as much.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be the telling factor if we are to improve that record in games that are crucial to us moving up the table. We've had this over the years now under Silva and Koeman, and every time it looks like we might just sneak a position higher and maybe get into Europe or go into maybe 5th as opposed to 6th or whatever, we always seem to buckle. Yeah. And I think with Ancelotti, this is probably a good indicator now and see what impact he's had, because if anybody can maybe give us the lift at the moment, it's having Ancelotti in the dugout, and it's a tough ask. It's a very tough ask. You're talking about we need to win at least 3 out of those 4 games against those sides around us, and I think you're talking for, what was that, 10 points out of 12. Yeah. You're asking for 3 wins out of 4 in the space of 10 to 12 days there in the calendar. Yeah. It's going to be a really difficult task to overcome, but if we can do it, I'll be honest, I think it'll be nothing short of a miracle. Yeah. But if anyone could do it, Ancelotti can do it.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think even if we had a different set of fixtures, for the remaining 6 or 7 of the season, I think we'd still be looking at it saying if we finish in the Europa League place here, it's a miracle. But certainly given the fixtures that we've got, we're not going to have an easy game between now and the end of the season. Like I said, we're playing sides that are either fighting for similar positions as we are or fighting for their lives, and I think it's important to understand that it is a big ask. You're coming up against sides that are in and around us, like your Wolves and your Sheffield United, but certainly Wolves, I've been massively impressed with Wolves this season, and certainly since the restart, they look like a fantastic side, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. I think it made an interesting point. I said in one of our shows on the channel a few days ago that we'd lost the games against the established top 6 before the lockdown, and that maybe it was out of our hands, but it's not out of our hands. And a guy commented, Jeff commented on one of our videos and said, no, you're wrong. It's not out of our hands. We can take control of our destiny if we beat these teams that are not far away from us in the table. Yeah. And we need to do that. If we're going to really make the strides forward, we need to be winning at least, like I say, 3 out of 4 of those games.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree. And he's right. It's not out of our hands. And again, these are the teams that, we notoriously come up against, and we usually perform quite well against your Leicesters in the Premier League, your Wolves, etc. It's Villas, the Southamptons that we usually tip ourselves up against, and they're the teams that we really need to be going out and winning. I agree, if we finish in the Europa League position, I think it will be a miracle from Carlo Ancelotti. I've said multiple times over the last couple of weeks or so since the Premier League's return that for me it's about finishing the season as positively as possible, and if we don't finish in the Europa League place, that's not necessarily a negative thing. If we can finish the season by picking up 15, 12, 10, 8 to 12 points out of the remaining fixtures, 15 points, then I think that's a good finish to the end of the season, certainly given the two results that we've just come off the back of. The Norwich game, I think a lot of us come into it thinking, right, we'll do these 3 or 4 or 5-0, and when you watch the game and you come out 1-0, it's sort of like, that wasn't quite what I expected.
It's a bit anticlimactic, isn't it?
It was a bit anticlimactic, but then you take yourself away from it and you think, well, we've just won a game against the side that are fighting for survival away from home. How many games did we win under Marco Silva away from home? I think we won 5 all of last season.
We only won 1 until he got sacked, that's for sure.
There you go, in the season, and Carlo Ancelotti's come in, and again, we say as Evertonians, one of the biggest sort of moaning points, I think, is that we don't win the games that we should be winning, and again, we didn't win it in the fashion that we may have liked, but we still won the game. In regards then to tomorrow's game, and realistically, when you look at the fixtures and you get your Spurs, your Wolves, your Sheffield Uniteds, even your Villas, teams that are fighting for survival, we need to step it up a little bit, don't we, from what we seen on Wednesday. We were okay on Wednesday. The performance was, it wasn't awful, but there was a little bit of sloppiness in regards to passing. We didn't create an awful lot. I think going into tomorrow, I think we really do need to step it up a gear.
We definitely need to step it up a gear. I don't think that can't... But don't forget, we were playing the bottom team, and I don't think... Even with your Aston Villas, who are just only a few positions ahead of Norwich, I don't think that performance will wash against any other team in this league. I think there needs to be a serious step up in level, and hopefully having this extra week of recovery between then and now, that might just sort of help the players refresh, regroup, and hopefully we can play a bit better. But I think we were talking about league positions and whatnot before. It's worth remembering that when Carlo Ancelotti took over, I think we were 15th.
Yeah.
So we are moving in the right direction, even if it's not as quickly as we'd like it to be.
Yeah. Exactly, you're spot on, and it's also worth remembering that there's not much difference between where we are sat now and 6th or 7th position. There's 4 points in it, and I think although you look at the fixture list and you think, bloody hell, we've got to play all of the teams around us. Like Jeff said, it's really in our hands. If we pick up the points, if we win the games, we'll jump the table massively, because the fact that the sides that are around us, we've got to play, and there's not many points within it. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Wolves and maybe Wolves more than Sheffield United will probably go on and win a lot of their remaining fixtures, and they may solidify their position. But certainly you look at your Sheffield United, the team that have had a good season so far, but since the restart, look like they've lost a little bit of momentum, look like that it hasn't done them well to have that much time off. Not saying it's done anybody well, but they've struggled since they've come back. I think we need to take advantage of that now and really step it up, and like I said, if we can finish in those European positions, I think it really will be a miracle. So talking about Carlo Ancelotti, then obviously coming in December, I think we're something like the 4th most informed team in the league. I remember we were the most informed team in the league for the first few weeks. He come in before the Arsenal game again. Had one real big defeat, notable defeat in the Premier League to Chelsea. Obviously lost that game to Arsenal, which we were very unlucky in. How then do you assess Carlo Ancelotti so far since he's come into Everton Football Club? And obviously given the fact that he's got the exact same squad that Marco Silva had, he's still got a lot of players that previous managers have had. And I always think of the Newcastle game away from home, for example, even the Norwich game the other day, Burnley game at home, his first game in charge. These wins that have, Watford away from home as well, that have took certain amounts of grit, certain amounts of determination, certain amounts of fight, certain amounts of tactical prowess from...
You need nous to get over the line in games like that.
Exactly, that we haven't seen before, and we've picked up, I'm not going to try and calculate it because my maths is shocking, but we've picked up a lot of points, I think, under Ancelotti that we wouldn't have picked up under previous managers. Go on.
You ask me, those 3 games you named there, we got 9 points. I think we'd have got 3. I think they'd have all been draws.
Yeah, I agree. Certainly the Watford game and the Newcastle game, I agree. 100%.
Oh, I forgot I completely. The Watford game would have been 0 points. Yeah. You know that for sure under Marco Silva.
Yeah.
There was no character in this team, and I think Ancelotti has restored a bit of character to the squad, and there's a bit more fight and a bit more hunger, but I think we're still dealing with inadequate players. in the squad. Some of these players aren't fit for purpose, certainly not for kicking us on to the level that we want to be at.
Yeah.
I think you can see evidence of it in our performances. There's times where sometimes we don't even look like a professional team. Sometimes it's appalling to watch, and there's some very good players in there dotted around with some very, very poor players as well. And there's certain players who the jury's out on as well. Like Tom Davis, I thought was good in the derby, but he was atrocious against Norwich.
Alex Iwobi.
Andre Gomez. Alex Iwobi was terrible in the derby, but was very good against Norwich, I thought. Yeah. Andre Gomez is not really at the height since he come back from injury, which I can kind of understand with the situation.
Yeah.
That he's recovering from a very bad injury, but even then you'd expect a bit more to come from him in the weeks that remain this season.
Yeah, I agree, spot on. This team needs massive restructure. I've said it for a long time. I think we need 2 central midfielders as a matter of urgency. We simply need somebody to get about the pitch. I done my predicted starting 11 for the game tomorrow yesterday, and I had Gomez and Sigurdsson in the midfield, and 2 months ago I'd have absolutely hated the thought of Gomez and Sigurdsson, and I'm not particularly fond of it now, but somebody commented, there's no energy in that midfield, we'll get taught to bits, but then I thought, well, where's the energy? Who's got the energy? And you could stick a Beningame in or a Dennis Adina in, but these are players that haven't got much Premier League experience, if any. They've not played in the first team for, certainly Beningame, for 12, 18 months or so. You could throw them in, but there's no guarantee that they'd step in and do the role that we're expecting them to do. So there definitely needs to be additions, and moving it back to the Europa League, then do you think that if we were to finish in a Europa League position, that would benefit us in terms of players coming in? Do you think the quality of players that we could attack would go up a bit? I think it's a thing, players, that the quality of players that you bring in being heightened if you finish in European competitions. So, do you think that it will benefit us in that way if we could possibly push?
Most definitely. I think not so much maybe the attracting players kind of thing. Maybe the odd player from abroad might be a bit more enticed by it. But I think the most important thing is the finances, which we might be able to afford an extra signing, because we know the money's going to be a bit tight this summer. And that money that we get from Europa League might bring in 1 or 2 more players that we wouldn't otherwise be able to bring in. And that's the big difference in moving up the league table, is obviously the higher you finish, the more money you get anyway. Yeah. But getting into Europe is a big jump in terms of the kind of money you're bringing in.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to be needed especially while we're trying to rebuild the squad quite quickly.
Yeah, spot on. And again, it doesn't help for Everton that Carlo Ancelotti's coming into an Everton side in a season where there's not going to be a lot of money. We can't blast 60, 70, 80 million pounds on 2 players. We can't spend hundreds of million pounds, and he's coming into this team that needs 2 centre midfielders, a centre back, a right back, possibly a right winger as well, and they're just players that you look at and go, they're almost essential. Certainly the midfielders, they're essential. We cannot go into next season with these these 5 midfielders per se, in Delph, Davis, Sigurdsson, Gomez and Gbamin, because there's just not enough energy there. There's no reliability with Gbamin, although I know it's not his fault and injuries can't be blamed on him, but
there's no reliability with Delph either. Exactly. He's constantly injured and he's constantly tweeting Liverpool fans, so
exactly, and again
he needs bombing right out him.
Yeah, exactly, and again I say this, and I honestly do believe there's a point of no return with Everton fans, and I think Fabian Delph's probably the player to pass that point of no return.
I think he's passed it twice now.
Exactly, and I think he's the player to do that quickly. I've never seen a player reach that point as quick as Fabian Delph reached it. He's come in and his sole purpose was I want to get to the point where nobody wants me at the football club. Talking about players then, slightly off topic, but we'll move on a little bit. Talking about players that once people would have thought have got no future at the football club and should just be sold because they're dead wood and earning lots of money. To now today, there was a little bit of a possible resurgence. Yannick Bolasie, I don't know if you've seen Yannick Bolasie's little statement on Twitter. He wrote a big letter thanking Sporting Lisbon, and then a letter to Everton which went along the lines of that he can't enter the training ground because of the COVID restrictions, and he can't be part of the matchday squad because he's not registered, which I think we all knew anyway. But as soon as he can get back, he's ready to show management that he's the player that he was 4 years ago, before he got injured, that he's been working hard and that he's ready to bounce back, and he can't wait to put on that blue shirt. What did you make of that? I mean, you have to applaud and appreciate his determination and his grit and his attitude as well, which I was really, really impressed with. Realistically, do you think there's any sort of resurgence for Yannick Bolasie at Everton?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but there might be, because I think he could actually be a better option on the right wing than Walcott.
Yeah.
I think he's got a bit more, even with his powers on the wane, I think he's got a bit more physicality to him, a bit more strength, and it's not ideal, but if in a season where we might be restricted, we might have to recall him, and to be honest, it's one of the ones that I'd be less peeved off with about recalling. Like it's better than maybe having to call on a Sandro or something again.
Yeah, I agree.
And of course, we're desperately lacking in right wingers. Certainly Walcott, I don't think is going to be able to do that right midfield job where he has to track back on a regular basis. I don't think that's his. I don't know whether Bolasie's up for it, but we haven't seen him try it yet, so he might be better than Walcott. We'd have to see, but I think one way or another we might have to accept that Bolasie might be a part of this squad again next season, even if it's only for one more year.
Yeah. No, I agree. He put that statement out today, and there was a lot of fans that were saying get him in. There's a lot of fans that were saying get him Besic in, to be fair, when it was announced that he was returned. But then there was a lot of fans that were a little bit hesitant on it. I agree 100% with you. Listen, it's not like Yannick Bolasie's coming to an Everton with, world-class wingers on both sides that you look at and go, all right, you've got good determination, but you're not getting in over them. He's coming into this team where his competition is an inconsistent Theo Walcott, who scored 1 goal this season and spent a lot of time on the injury bench. A Bernard, who I like, but again needs to be more consistent. And Alex Iwobi, who hasn't been consistent on the wing. So I agree. I think, and I can't believe I'm saying it, I think there is a possibility that Yannick Bolasie, with the attitude that he says in that letter, as long as he shows that on the training field, as long as he shows that on the pitch to Carlo Ancelotti, and I've got no reasons to believe why he wouldn't. But as long as he puts what he's written down on that note into practice on at Finch Farm and on the pitch, I can see Yannick Bolasie playing for Everton again, and again, his age is a worry, and obviously he's on a big contract.
But he's the same age as Theo Walcott, though.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Exactly. Listen, if we were to go out and say, right, okay, Yannick's going to come in, he's probably not going to play a lot because we're going to sign X, Y, or Z. A 23-year-old winger who's fantastic and tears it up in Europe, then I'd go okay. But if you're putting Theo Walcott and Yannick Bolasie together, who do I think would infuriate the opposition more? Who do I think is more threatening to the opposition? I think it's Yannick Bolasie, and I also think Yannick Bolasie's got an attitude there that you don't see from many players. An attitude of, I come in, I struggle with injury, I was forced out, and now I'm going to work my way back in, I'm going to get my head down, and I'm going to work hard, and you have to commend that. And again, I think for those fans that are a little bit, it's done and dusted, I really don't see the harm in Yannick Bolasie coming into this squad, coming into Finch Farm at the end of the season.
Fighting for his
place. And having a full pre-season. Nobody's saying that he's got to play Premier League games for Carlo Ancelotti to decide if he's good enough or not. For all we know, Carlo Ancelotti could invite Yannick Bolasie in on the same day that all of the rest of the players come back after, for the new season. And by the first 2 games, he could have made the decision on whether he's good enough or not, but he could be good enough, and Yannick Bolasie could be starting the first couple of games of next season because he showed that determination, he showed that fight, and he's proven that he's got the quality. Obviously,
it's worth noting as well, by the way, that in his spell at Crystal Palace, Bolasie, and maybe even the spell before his injury at Everton, he showed far more consistency for both clubs in his career than Walcott's ever shown in his career, because Walcott's been a consistently inconsistent player for his entire career, whereas Bolasie, it might have just have been his career's been derailed by a bad injury.
Yeah.
But I think he's still more reliable than Walcott in terms of consistency and injury record as well. I think Walcott himself has a bad injury record.
Yeah.
So, there's no harm in giving him a try. I don't think he could be as unreliable as he could be any worse in terms of unreliability than Walcott.
Yeah, I agree, and talking about Fabian Delph crossing that point of no return with Everton fans, Yannick Bolasie's done the complete opposite. A little bit like Hummel, which is completely off topic, but Hummel have done the opposite. They've got involved with Evertonians, they've created that bond, they've created that relationship. Yannick Bolasie only had to go on Twitter and wind up a few Reds and call them out for being glory hunters, and a lot of Evertonians were jumping on that, going, "You're boss, you're great." And I think he, I'm not saying he didn't mean any of that, but I think he's done that knowing, right, okay, within the next week or so, I'm going to put out a statement as to say, I want to come back, I want to work hard. and fans are going to go, you know what, give him his opportunity, fair enough. He's
been rattling some cop-outs on
exactly.
Twitter.
He's been rattling some cop-out. Who deserves it more? Get him in there. And I think if he'd have put that statement out after going missing for 6 months and not said anything, then you might have got a bit more of a negative response. But the fact that he's been there, he's spoken about how much he loves Evertonians, about how much he loves the clubs. He's also one of the first people to comment on any other Everton players' posts. If Don puts a post up, for example, Luke Garbutt put a post up today and he was commenting on him. So he's very clearly liked within the dressing room, and has got a good relationship with the players. And as long as he's gonna get his head down, work hard. Again, nobody's saying that he's got to play an entire season before we can judge if he's good enough or not. Carlo Ancelotti's a very good, very experienced manager. He'll be able to judge whether Yannick Bolasie can offer us something within the first 4 to 5 weeks of him training with the football club. But he deserves that opportunity because there's other players in this side that are playing Premier League football.
They haven't taken their opportunities. I don't
Exactly.
think that the players we've got available to us now, they've not been doing good enough. There's no reason why he couldn't maybe come in and do it. Even if it's only a marginally better job, he could maybe come in and do that.
Exactly.
Same with Mohamed Besic, by the way. Yeah, I don't see how Besic could be any worse than Fabian Delph's for us this season.
Exactly. And it is important to remember when these players are coming back from the loans and they're talking about how they want to get their head down and they want to play for Everton, because obviously they want to play for Carlo Ancelotti. Who wouldn't? It's important to remember that they're not just coming in going, I want a new contract and I want to get paid a little bit more money and to sit on the bench. They're coming in and have got the desire to play for one of the best managers in world football ever to have managed in world football. The players that are currently playing in the Everton squad have had an opportunity for months and months, and some of them haven't taken it, like James rightly said. Your Fabian Delphs, your Morgan Schneiderlins, I know he's gone now, your Theo Walcott. So why should the players that have been out on loan that are now coming back, why shouldn't they get their opportunity? It was interesting. It made me smile reading the statement because I just like any player that comes out and speaks about their love for Everton. That's why I absolutely love Richarlison. But I think it's definitely an interesting topic, and I hope we at least get to see Yannick Bolasie given some form of opportunity. Because ultimately I think he deserves it. Calvert-Lewin says evening to all. Ben says hi. King Arthur says sell Pickford. Can't see us qualifying for Europe with Pickford. What do you think about that then? There was a rumour regarding Jordan Pickford and Chelsea potentially being interested in him. For me, I just think it's just paper talk at the moment. I don't think we'll sell Jordan Pickford. I don't think Chelsea will buy Jordan Pickford for the money we'd want for him. But how do you feel about Jordan Pickford then? Are you happy with him, or would you potentially be looking to move him on?
If he'd have asked me during the lockdown, I'd have said bomb him out. I think he was atrocious before the lockdown, but I think the two performances we've seen from him since the return, 2 clean sheets, I thought he's been a lot more mature and a lot more assured in himself.
Yeah.
And I think he's been a lot calmer. I think it helps not having. I think he's one of those kind of players, maybe like a Jamie Vardy, where he's. I think it helps. Maybe it helps Pickford not having the fans there to. I think he pulling faces at the fans and stuff like that. I think he's a bit immature like that.
Yeah.
I think maybe you're not having the fans in the stadium might actually really help Jordan Pickford to regain some form, and you never know where that might lead. Do we consider selling him if Chelsea come in with the right price? Maybe we do, to be honest, because it's worth noting Chelsea have had the transfer ban. If anybody could afford to pay the money we want for him, it might be them.
Yeah. It's them.
And obviously they're not too thrilled with Kepa Arrizabalaga or Caballero, so I think they will want a new number one. And if they offer the right money, I would sell to Chelsea. But then there's the whole issue of who replaces him at Everton.
That's the thing, isn't it?
We could end up replacing him with someone who underperforms even more. So it's a risky situation. Like, what other goalkeepers are out there? We've heard rumours about Donnarumma and everything before the lockdown, but
yeah, I agree.
It's hard to see.
I agree. It's difficult, isn't it, with Jordan Pickford? I absolutely agree with you, by the way, on the no crowd and getting his head down. I also think Carlo Ancelotti's been a big part of that. Since Carlo Ancelotti's come in again, I'll refer back to the Newcastle game away from home, he seems a lot calmer, he seems to have got his head down, and that's no surprise. Jordan Pickford went to a World Cup with England and, saved England against Colombia in a penalty shootout and was lauded by the whole entire country for a week or so afterwards. And, I think that got to him, and you can very clearly see that got to him. And, with Marco Silva, no disrespect to Marco Silva, but if Marco Silva's telling you to calm down, down, Jordan Pickford probably looking at him going, I've just been to a World Cup semi-final, saved my country, had the whole world lauding me, had the whole country lauding me. You know, what do you know? Whereas if Carlo Ancelotti comes in and says, listen, get your head down,
Behave
work
yourself.
hard, behave yourself. So as Neville Southall said a couple of months ago when I went to a little live night with him, he said his quote was, stop being a tit. If Carlo Ancelotti's saying that to Jordan Pickford, he's probably going to sit and go, actually, this fella knows what he's talking about. This fella's managed the best goalkeepers on the planet, the best players on the planet. Every other week, there's a quote from one of the best footballers of all time talking about how fantastic Carlo Ancelotti was. Hernan Crespo was the quote today coming out saying he's like a father to me. I enjoy watching Everton and I hope they win. These players that we're attracting to our football club because of the manager, and I do think that has had an impact on Jordan Pickford, because like you said, since Carlo's come in, he seems to have got his head down. He seems to be just concentrating on the game, not concentrating on the fans, not concentrating on trying to be the class clown.
It's the manager has helped, but I do think he was still too erratic before the lockdown. I don't think his performances were poor. But the 2 games we've seen from him so far, I think he's been a lot better, a lot more composed.
Exactly.
And hopefully that continues.
Yeah. No, I agree. And he hasn't had an awful lot to do, but what he's had to do, he's done well, and he hasn't panicked. And I think Jordan Pickford needs to adopt the whole sort of the goalkeeper situation. Neville Southall spoke about it loads in his career. He says he doesn't want to have to do an awful lot. He wants to be able to stand there and just watch the game, because that means that the rest of the team are performing. If Neville Southall had to have a fantastic game and he was after pulling save after save, left, right and centre out, he'd do it, but that would mean that somebody wasn't performing in front of him. And I think Jordan Pickford needs to understand that if he's having to stand there for a lot of the game and just stay focused but not really have to do much, that's because we're playing well as a side.
I think that's a really interesting point, actually, what you made about Southall. I think you look at, there's always these Neville Southall show reels, all his great saves. The bulk of them were in the 90s when we were awful. I think there's only really the Mark Falco one from 85 that I can recall from when we were really, really good. I think loads of those saves were from like sort of 92, 93 sort of time when we weren't actually that good, and we needed them to pull us out of jail sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And he also said, Southall on the night, he said he used to have a traffic light system when he was in goal, and he said he thinks, because he was asked a direct question about Jordan Pickford, which is the context to what I'm talking about, and he said he had a traffic light system, so practically he said what he thinks Jordan Pickford does sometimes is tries to concentrate 100% at all times, even when the ball's in their half or we're attacking or Richarlison's running down the wing, he's trying to concentrate, which ultimately means that later on in the game, when he has to concentrate, he loses it because he's focused too much on concentrating on what he doesn't need to do. And Neville Southall said he used to have a traffic light system where practically he'd have red, where the ball was comfortably in the opposition's half and we were attacking and we were passing it round. He'd have amber, where he could see that there was a little bit of danger, which was more concentration get on. He was still concentrated on red, but it wasn't a straight force. It was just a relaxed concentration. Amber, where he'd switch on, he'd know that there was something coming, and then green, where obviously they'd be in our half attacking us and he'd have to be fully concentrated. And he said that massively helped him because it helped reserve that energy, and it meant that he didn't have to be fully clued up and focused for the entirety of the game, because he said, and this isn't coming from me, this is coming from arguably the greatest goalkeeper to ever play football, he said you can't concentrate 150% for 90 minutes as a goalkeeper, because there will be a point where your brain just loses it, and that point is usually when you need to be at your most, when you need to concentrate the most. And you might listen to that and think, oh, that's a load of shit, but looking at some of Jordan Pickford's mistakes, it looks like he's lost concentration.
He's such an intense person, I think, Pickford, isn't he? So I think that wouldn't surprise me at all, that he's maybe overly focused, if you like.
Yeah, at times, and then he loses that focus when he needs to have it. So I agree. I think he's got all the potential to be a fantastic goalkeeper, but like most players in our squad, it's consistency, and he needs to do it more consistently. And if Chelsea did come in with a big offer, okay, a lot of fans would be happy to sell him, and if we had a goalkeeper lined up to come in and replace him who was guaranteed to be better than him and more consistent, then that's how football works. But I just don't know whether there is a goalkeeper that could be lined up to come in and replace him, and I also think we could do with not putting ourselves in a situation where we need another key position as soon as possible this transfer window, considering there's not going to be a lot of money this transfer window, we're not going to be able to sign many players, and we're already needing 2 centre midfielders as a matter of urgency. We could do without needing a goalkeeper, because then we're either going to focus too much on a goalkeeper and then go into next season with the same midfielders we've got now, or not focus on a goalkeeper and go in with Jonas Lersel, who we don't know whether he will be good enough or not. So for me this season, I'd hold off on selling Jordan Pickford unless Chelsea come in with an absolute ridiculous offer. But I don't think they will, purely because of how much money they spent on Kepa, and I also don't think they'll get much of that back from Kepa. John says, how are we doing today? Let us know your thoughts on a late push for Europe. I'm not too bad. Sonny says, if we don't get into Europa League, we have a better chance of doing well in the EFL Cup due to the top 7 and 8 not competing in it next season. Is that a thing? I didn't know that.
It is, and I'm not keen on that because, you know, everyone talks about Liverpool's league title and that.
Yeah.
Our League Cup win, if we won that, would have an asterisk next to it.
I agree. And you know what? Everton would probably do better playing in a League Cup that was only the top 7 or 8 than there seems that a lot. You know, we could sit here and go, oh, brilliant, we're going to be playing League 2 teams and get knocked out in the first round to Lincoln or somebody stupid like that. This is Everton we're talking about, isn't it?
Precisely. I mean, look at the teams who've knocked us out of the League Cup, with the exception of maybe City in the semi-final. I can't really remember.
Yeah.
Every time it always seems to be like a championship team who knocks us out.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. There's just Everton in it. John says, what's everybody made of the whole Luke Garbutt saga today then? So just to give a bit of context before we go to James for his opinion. Carlo Ancelotti done his pre-game press conference for tomorrow's game, and obviously today is the 30th of June, which marks the day that the players' contracts that have expired, that didn't get a short-term extension for the end of the season, have left the football club. Luke Garbutt was one of those players. Umar Niasse and Cuco Martina were 2 others. And Luke Garbutt's been at Everton since he was 11 years, since he was 16 years old, I believe, because he joined the academy, and then obviously he's had his contracts ever since until today. And a journalist asked Carlo Ancelotti a direct question, practically, why have you decided to let Luke Garbutt go? It's a ridiculous question in my opinion, considering Luke Garbutt hasn't been a part of the first team for 2-3 years.
5 years. 5 years.
5 years. 5 years, there you go. He probably hasn't stepped foot in Finch Farm once since Carlo Ancelotti's been the manager. And yes, Carlo Ancelotti has been here 6 months, so he doesn't know every single player from the under-6s to the first team. It's impossible for him to know that. And given the job he's got on his hands with the first team, he's probably more focused on us winning Premier League football games than who's played for us 10 years ago and whether they've got a contract or no. And that's Marcel Brands' job, and that's why Marcel Brands will have made that decision, and Carlo Ancelotti probably went, you make that decision, I'll make the decision on Niasse and Martina because they're part of the first team squad, they're shite, they're gone, whoever else is out of contract, whoever's on loan, you make that decision. So firstly, I think it's a ridiculous question by the journalist, and it set him up. I think the same journalist tried to ask him about the Liverpool supporters and tried to force him into a corner to have a go at them. I think he said something along the lines of, I wouldn't do it myself, I'd be safe, but they've won the league after 30 years, something like that. But the Luke Garbutt situation, he was asked the question and he said who. He turned to who was next to him, and then he said, sorry, I don't know, I don't know much, which I think is an honest answer. I think what he's saying there is, I don't know, I wasn't aware that we had a player called Luke Garbutt who's left the football club, because I don't need to know that bit of information, which he doesn't. What did you make of it then? Luke Garbutt seemed to have taken it really well. He got a little bit of stick. I don't know why. He got a little bit of stick from Evertonians on Twitter about, he hasn't been here 11 years, this, that, the other, and he explained that he's been here since he was in the academy. I've got no issue with Luke Garbutt, by the way. I think he come in that 2014-15 season, Wolfsburg away in the Europa League. I thought he had a decent season. There was a point where you were thinking, right, okay, this lad's going to be the Leighton Baines replacement. He's what we needed. He admits himself all over social media today, poor decisions and injuries ruined his Everton career, and he literally come out and said, but that's footy. No hard feelings. Wish everybody the best of luck. Love the football club. I'll move on. Most Evertonians relayed that and said, thanks for your time. Good luck in the future. And he even had a little bit of a laugh at the Carlo Ancelotti situation. He also made a comment and said, listen, a lot of players would take that disrespectfully from the club and Ancelotti, but I just take it as a laugh, which is what it is. Alan Myers then had tweeted out to say that, it's not Carlo's responsibility, and it shouldn't fall on Carlo Ancelotti. And Luke Garbutt's obviously taking it well. What did you make of the entire situation? And I was a little bit, when I heard Ancelotti say it, I was a little bit, because I knew that it would get made into effectively it's a molehill that's been made into a mountain, in it really. It's something that's been blown out of proportion for no other reason as to try and frame Carlo Ancelotti to look like a bad person. Whereas realistically, is there anything in it? What did you make of it when you seen it?
First of all, who's this player we're talking about?
It's Luke Garbutt. He played for us 5 years ago at some point.
Who? Honestly, mate, I think you painted the picture perfectly there. It's the Liverpool echo, the Copite echo, as we know it better, maybe, trying to paint Carlo Ancelotti in a bad light. And we know the kind of character Ancelotti is. He's a very good person, as well as a good football manager. Like you say, he's never once managed this player. He's been out on loan at Ipswich for as long as Ancelotti's been the coach.
Yeah.
There's no reason for him to have had any kind of contact with Garbett until maybe today, and like you say, Marcel Brands is overseeing that for him. So there's no reason for him to have any contact with Garbett, particularly with the knowledge that he is leaving the club.
Yeah.
And there was just no need for that kind of question to be posed to him. If it was Marcel Brands doing the presser, then by all means, ask that question.
Yeah.
But that, like you say, it isn't his responsibility. Maybe Mias and Martina, because he's used them to a small extent in the first team. But I think that and the Liverpool supporters question, I think they were both utterly ridiculous questions from the journalist. Was it a Liverpool Echo journalist, by the way?
I don't know, to be honest with you, and I'm not too sure. I don't know,
because I might be slating the Echo here for no reason. They've done nothing wrong, but whoever it was who posed those questions was clearly trying to put a negative spin on Carlo's rhetoric, and it's typical of the press, regardless of what newspaper it is, to try and smear Everton, particularly when it's somebody who's well liked at Everton in the beginning. It doesn't surprise me at all, and it's just low lives in the press at the end of the day. And I'm not a massive fan of the press, as you can tell.
No, I agree.
This is the kind of spin that's put on everything with regard to Everton. If you think everything to do with Liverpool spun positively, everything to do with Everton is spun negatively, and I think that's part of the system where they try and get more clicks by getting Liverpool fans to laugh at us or something. I think that's kind of what the aim is when they do stuff like that. It's very much a more clicks, more money kind of system that they've got in place there, and that's the agenda, is to try and make more money. If this is the best way, then so be it. I don't think it's anything necessarily maybe that they have against Everton. I think they're just greedy people who want more money. But at the end of the day, it does wind us up as fans to see the media constantly trying to paint decent people at the club in a bad light. Yeah. I think Carlo Ancelotti is probably the most well-regarded figure at Everton Football Club for quite some time. Yeah. I think it won't wash with our fan base. I think the fans know he's a good manager. He's a good person.
Yeah, spot on.
I don't think any of that rubbish will wash. And I think the journalist who asked both of those questions, the Liverpool fan thing is absolutely nothing to do with the Everton manager. There was no need for that.
Exactly.
Even if Jurgen Klopp said something, it's nothing to do with Carlo Ancelotti. And I think the journalist has stooped pretty low there, and he shouldn't be pleased with himself for that.
Yeah, spot on. As a lot of them always do, and for me, they shouldn't be allowed in the room again, because they're asking questions that are totally unrelated to tomorrow's game, for example, which is why Carlo Ancelotti was at the presser, and totally.
That's what the conference was for. Exactly. So keep the questions to the squad, the match. Granted, Luke Garbett might have been a member of the squad, strictly speaking, but he's not a member of the squad. Ancelotti's used, and what on earth the Liverpool fans' behaviour has to do with the upcoming game against Leicester, I have no idea.
Yeah, spot on. I agree, and Alan Meyer said that in his tweet. He said, Carlo Ancelotti is one of the nicest men on the planet, never mind at the football club, and he would not have done that disrespectfully. It would not have been something that he's done to push him off the side, and I think Luke Garbett knows that himself, which is why he's taken it very, very positively. Listen,
I think by the way, I think we have to commend Luke Garbett for the way he's taken it in the stride as well, by the way, because I think loads of people could have gone ooh, and maybe put a bit of an indirect comment on Twitter or something, and made more of it than there already was. Yeah. And I think Garbett, he's been very mature about it, and he's dealt with it really well.
Exactly. It's an innocent. It's not a who, as in I know him, I know who he is, but I'm going to act like I don't know who he is.
I'm going to diss him like it wasn't.
It was an innocent. I don't know this lad because he hasn't stepped foot in any vicinity I've been in regarding Everton Football Club ever. I've only been here 6 months. He's been out on loan. His contract's being dealt with by somebody else. So I don't know. I can't. He's not going to comment on a player that he doesn't know because, for example, if he'd have said, "Oh yeah, brilliant servant over 11 years, had some fantastic seasons. That season where he scored that worldie, Everton have gone, well, hang on, that's not right. He didn't do that, so he didn't know, so he's not going to comment. He's a very honest man, and like you've said,
if anything, that kind of honesty is only going to go down well with our fan base. The fan base at Everton love honesty.
Yeah. Exactly.
And integrity, and I think Ancelotti represents that.
Exactly, spot on, and I think I would not be surprised if Ancelotti picked up the phone to Luke Gorbals or texted him saying, listen, it's not personal, because that's the type of manager he is. Again, I'll go back to my point about 10-15 minutes ago. We're hearing some of the best footballers on the planet come out and say about how good Carlo Ancelotti is, how good he is as a man, how fantastic he is as a manager, how nice he is as a person. That is just the journalist trying to spin that negatively and trying to make him look bad. That journalist knew full fucking well that Carlo Ancelotti hasn't managed or worked with Luke Gorbals, and he also probably knew fucking well that he hasn't dealt with his contract situation either. He probably thought, Marcel Brands has dealt with this contract, this lad's never been in and around the first team whilst Carlo's been here, so I'm going to ask him a direct question.
Carlo doesn't know, so I'm going to try and spin what he says as disrespectful.
Yeah, exactly, and it's
absolutely,
it's ridiculous, and you're right, it doesn't wash with Evertonians, it really doesn't wash. As soon as it come out, a lot of Evertonians, including myself, were calling out the journalist for asking such a ridiculous question. And yeah, Luke Gorbals took it fantastically, and he could have said, oh, it's disrespectful, but ultimately it's not disrespectful because it's honest. Like I said, Carlo Ancelotti's probably asked, the first thing he's probably asked after that presser was, who's Luke Gorbals and why am I being asked that question? And he's probably been told, oh, this is a lad that's been here since he's been 16, sent out on loan. You don't know him because he wasn't part of the squad, and you've been focusing on, the first team. And he's probably gone, give us a phone, I'll give him a call or I'll drop him a text. And you know what? If Carlo Ancelotti sat here and said and give us a big spiel about how good of a servant Luke Gorbals was for Everton, and then we go out and get swatted tomorrow against Leicester, and he says, well, actually, yesterday I spent all day looking at the players' contracts and where how the players have progressed at Everton and them leaving. He's focusing on the first team, as to which Luke Gorbals isn't a part of that, so that we can get the results that we need to get. Yeah, Carlo Ancelotti hasn't got time to focus on everything at the football club, and ultimately players' contracts, specifically players that aren't part of that first team. He's not even registered to Everton this season, so why would Carlo Ancelotti be focusing on him?
Well, he's a first team coach, isn't he?
Exactly. It was a ridiculous question posed by a ridiculous journalist to try and tip Ancelotti up, and for me, I'm not into
I think Carlo Ancelotti, by the way, he's one of the most experienced managers in the world. I mean, I think he's seen enough to know when journalists are trying to plant that kind of seed.
Exactly. He's seen it all before, he's heard it all before, and he won't be surprised. He probably will say to Everton, get that dickhead out and don't bring him back. John says, it wasn't the Echo, James, just so you know. Gorbals has tweeted out a highlight reel of his season at Ipswich, tagging Everton and saying, look what Carlo was missing. Exactly, with a laughing face. I've seen it before the stream. He's having a laugh, he's having a joke. He's taking it in his stride, and again, respect to Luke Gorbals.
I think he's shown a lot of maturity there. I think that's brilliant from him. And but on the note of the Liverpool supporters question, what was all that about? I mean, that bears absolutely no relevance to anything with regard to the squad or contracts or anything like that. Exactly. All it was a gang of yobs gathering at the docks, misbehaving, firing fireworks at the Liver building, you name it, all the rubbish that went on Friday night. And rightfully, maybe Liverpool Football Club, but I don't think that's Jurgen Klopp's place to condemn, by the way. I think he's only come out because he's an influential figure who the fans look up to. And I think maybe he's took it upon himself, but even then, I don't think it should have been Jurgen Klopp's responsibility.
Certainly not.
It was on. Exactly. Well, I think the ownership and the CEOs, maybe that might have been their place to speak out. Yeah. And I think, if anything, it's more on the council and the police who need to take more leadership on that front, because it's nothing to do with football at the end of the day. It's a public gathering, whether it's celebrating them winning the league or celebrating. Exactly, yeah. That's what a lot of people were probably just treating that as, and it should be treated that way by the council and the authorities, because, I mean, granted, it's to do with Liverpool, so maybe they should step in and say their piece, and I think they have done. But what relevance does that bear to Everton at all? It's certainly not to Carlo. So
none.
Well, I think it was an absolutely one of the most absurd questions I've ever heard in a press conference.
Yeah, it
was. To do with a football match.
Yeah, exactly. That which has bears no relevance to them whatsoever. I was disgraced by the actions and by everything that I've seen, and the mere thought that anybody supporting a club that badge is represented by a building firing fireworks at said building because it was lit up a certain colour, which wasn't even anything to do with Everton.
No, it was Armed Forces.
It was Armed Forces Day, yeah, which just infuriates me. And like I said, I don't want to get into it because I'll go on this big spiel for ages.
No,
and ages.
we're not either. To be fair, I wasn't really pointing the finger at Liverpool fans. To be honest, I was more pointing the finger at the journalist who decided to bring Liverpool fan behaviour into an Everton pre-match press conference.
Exactly.
Which was absolutely ridiculous, and there was no need for it.
Exactly. But and you know, I'm happy because I'm happy with Carlo Ancelotti because, you know, at times certain managers wouldn't be able to deal with that pressure in press conferences and those type of questions, and maybe would have answered them wrong. But Carlo Ancelotti's shown, even whilst he's been at Everton, that he knows how to spin the media as well as they try and spin the questions. He done it when he was asked about transfers before the break. He said, you know, all of the names you're reading in the papers is wrong, and all of the names you're reading in Sky Sports is wrong.
I think that was utterly fantastic what he did there, by the way. And I think maybe that's the kind of thing. I think maybe the press are trying the hardest to try and trip him up because he trips them up.
Yeah. He just
and maybe it's a bit of tit for tat, really, isn't it?
That's it, and he's not going to be tipped up. And again, his answer about the other day was as you would expect. I wouldn't do it. I'd stay in, but they done it. That was it. Move on. Which I think is we shouldn't have been asked the question anyway. Blue Boys Network, Mike says, I think we'll finish 8th. Good video, both, and stay safe. Thank you very much. And he says, James, never ever get an haircut like Cam, he says. And Balassi is better than Walcott. Offers more. I agree. We'll go for a couple more then before we finish up. Where are we? We had one before. Liam says, seems any media outlets and journalists trying to spin any negative press onto us really want to know why we that much of a threat to Liverpool that they need to be brought up in our press conferences. Again, it's the media trying to paint us in a bad light after that club has been painted in a bad light. We've seen it, the Echo contacting Everton.
No, the worst one was after the Liverpool decided to fail people and they tried to find some evidence of Everton. Fanatics failing people. I think that was like blatant, as blatant evidence as you'll ever get of that. But obviously they've followed suit again here, and it does grate on you, doesn't it? It
does. It's annoying, but like I said about Ancelotti, we've got a manager now that'll be able to deal with it, and that'll be able to just say, listen, just got to do one basically, and sip them up as much as they try and sip him up. James says, I'm positive for the first time in a while going into next season with having a manager like Ancelotti gives the place a lift as well as the players. I agree. Anyway, we're going to end it there then. I hope you have all enjoyed today's live stream. If you had, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel below as well for loads more content. Just to summarise then, I think it'll be a big job if we are to push for European places at the end of this season. It's not impossible given the manager that we've got, but we're going to have to pick up an awful lot of points against decent sides and sides that are fighting for
the same thing we're fighting for, basically.
Yeah, exactly. John says, make sure to subscribe to the channel in case nobody isn't. Not too far off 5k subs, less than a month to go. Definitely subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, there, lads. Come on, definitely subscribe.
There you go. On the Mighty Blues, I think we're about 150 away from 2,000, so if you could go over there and subscribe to us as well, it'd mean a massive definitely amount to me. Follow all the socials and everything, mine and James's and the Toffee Blues in the description down below. Anything to say before we finish up, James?
Not much really, to be honest. I think that there's not a lot you can say in this footballless week for us. I mean, we've got 7 more games, I think. Yeah. It's all about getting points, and if anyone can do it, it's Carlo Ancelotti. And I think this literally has been just an entire show of bigging up Carlo Ancelotti, and why the hell not? Because he's the best there is. That's it.
And like you said, going into these fixtures, needing the points that we need under any previous manager, I'd say, you know what? Just don't worry about it.
We're not even going to bother. What's the point?
Exactly. Whereas under Carlo, I'm thinking it'll be an ask, but it's a possibility, and I honestly do believe it is a possibility.
Where there's Carlo, there's hope.
There is. Where there's Carlo, there's a way. That's going to be the slogan, especially if we beat Leicester tomorrow. That'll be getting blasted all. That'll just be my instant match reaction. Where does Carlo? There's a way. If we do beat Leicester tomorrow, I'll be absolutely made up, by the way. Big thanks for watching. Please hit the like button if you have enjoyed. Big thanks to everybody for getting involved in the live comments. Really do appreciate all of the support. If you're watching a YouTube video, leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Big thanks to James for coming on once again. We'll see you next week for another live stream. Subscribe if you're new. Leave the video a like, and we'll see you soon.
See you later.
There you go.